Each packet together?
Yeah.
I'll just take mine home.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, shall we continue? Is everybody ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Well, Eric's coming in.
Oh, he's here. He's here.
Good to see you.
All right. Next up, we have a public hearing for 3 Rock Street. This is for a 60 square foot variance to allow a dwelling, an attached dwelling, to convert a single family home into a 2-family home in the R3 district. Bring us your stuff, please, Karen. And we have packets here. Everybody would like one. That was nice when John went through all these receipts for us.
It's nice.
Sign, I didn't see the sign there. I mean, I didn't go look for it. So
I saw it.
You did? Great. Not that I don't trust the other.
Was, I did comment to Jeff that the wooden stakes are difficult to get into the ground.
Yeah, we're still working that out.
Perfecting the system.
The markings that show you which board you come up against will also come off.
So we need a greasy or grease pencil.
Need a Sharpie.
These are all LLCs. Must have done something wrong when I bought a house.
Wow.
What?
LCC is not protected necessarily. Can't own a home.
All right. So I'd like to open the public hearing for the area variance for 3 Rock Street. Karen, go. Get started.
Good evening. My name is Karen Parks and I'm representing High Rock Views LLC, the owner of 3 Rock Street. We are applying for a variance to allow the minimum livable floor area of the dwelling to be below the required minimum of 600 square feet. The property currently contains a single-family residence, and the owner is proposing to divide the existing dwelling to create 2 dwelling units, which is allowed in the R3 multifamily district. The division of the dwellings will be contained entirely within the existing building footprint. And the reason why we are requesting the variance is to minimize the construction within the structure and also maintain the practical use of the main dwelling by maintaining spaces that are devoted to that particular unit, and then create the separate dwelling with minimal impact to that. And as a result, our square footage of the second dwelling, it falls slightly below the required minimum of 600 square feet. So we feel that the request is minimal, will have no negative impact on the neighborhood, that actually the structure will appear and function very much as it does now. Yes, it will become a 2-family dwelling, however, the overall size of the structure isn't changing on the lot, the character of the neighborhood is not changing.
Don't let them trip you up by using the wrong word.
While it is creating two residences, we don't expect, a large traffic increase with the two residences because the overall occupancy of the building is really not increasing. We're not adding a second dwelling, we're dividing the existing into two.
I'm gonna
We're gonna go into, sorry,
Matt,
sorry.
Thank you. Matt can continue to talk and we can,
Should be on the record anyway. Just to-
So all of our other zoning requirements are met, as is shown in the zoning conformance chart. We exceed the required parking, which is 2 spaces per dwelling. We currently have 5 spaces, so there's no required alterations to the site in any way. And that's basically our application.
So the application concerns only the 40 feet discrepancy, and not the division into 2 dwellings. That's all established. You have the right to do that.
Correct, yes, it's a, 2 family units are allowed in the R3 multifamily district. We are required to have site plan approval to convert from a single to a 2-family, so our public hearing for that is next week, but that is allowed.
And the purpose of 600 minimum would be psychological? Where, health?
I'm not sure why the code allows that, maybe it's to, eliminate having a building divided into 4 or 5, 300 square foot studio apartments. I'm not sure.
I know that's one of the issues that CU's code update committee is looking at, the minimum required size of a dwelling.
And, you know, there is some relevance to this issue now, and what are some of the ideas? So we can understand maybe some of the intent behind the 600 feet minimum.
well, it could also be if you have 300 square foot units, then you have twice as much parking needed. And that would be not practical or tenable for most
That would
properties.
definitely be an element.
Not to mention fire hazards, I would think.
I mean, just so we know what we're
Difficult.
comparing this to, why 600 minimum is looked at as,
Donald, do you have any architectural knowledge of these things?
You know, it's like a moving target. I mean, 600, you know, you don't know where they might have very well got the number from another code that was adopted, you know, the language was adopted. I sincerely doubt that the trustees or whoever wrote the zoning code for Cold Spring went through an analysis of what, you know, what could be, what 600 square feet exactly entailed in terms of, minimum size that would be good, but it's there and it's probably comes from other codes and, you know, it's not, I think most other codes are around that number. I think, code update committee, we looked at it, and, you know, but that's, future, it doesn't have any relevance now in terms of what the code says.
but maybe we just can get an understanding and a feel, I mean, since nobody can definitively say what those reasons were, at this moment. I mean, I'm
I think
sure-
you're right. I think part of it is the smaller the units, the more parking is gonna be generated, the more need for parking. I'm sure that there's, you know, you could get into a situation where you would be creating tenements where you said, if you said, you know, 50 square feet or 80 square feet or 100 square feet. So that's another reason why those are in there. Building code says some certain things about minimums, but I think they're mainly to do with size of rooms and stuff. I know there's like a 7-foot dimension that, you know, a habitable room can't be less than 7 feet in one dimension. This is,
Well, there's no issue with parking here, so.
I'm not sure that there's necessarily any life safety or health issues involved with the 600 square foot. It's not a magic number that way.
Karen, would you mind talking about the difficulty that exists in not having a 600, I mean, what would it take to make it 600 feet, I guess?
Sure. So, again, the primary reason, if everyone has Plan A1 in front of them, that the owners would like to try to develop the second unit with minimal construction impact to the existing dwelling, but also maintain as much of the use and function of the primary existing residence as possible. And an important part of that function is the pantry that's associated with the existing kitchen of the main house. And while we could incorporate that whole space into the second dwelling and meet the square footage, we're taking away a very important part of the larger main dwelling. And
The pantry is 60 square feet?
no, it's greater than 40, so we need another 40 square feet
In
to,
addition to the pantry?
and the pantry is greater than that, but, taking that away from the main house is a significant loss to the function of the main house, versus a gain to the apartment. And the way the walls are laid out, we'd have to open up and do more construction within the second dwelling to create a more livable space because of the way the partitions are. So, our goal is to minimize the work on the main building and maintain the function in a more practical way.
What is the total square footage of the entire house is?
It's, I believe, it's over 5,000, I think that's on the zone.
And so those 40 extra feet are critical square feet, just adding, with a 5,000 square foot house.
I know, it seems as if they aren't, however, because of the layout of the house and, the way that pantry is associated to the kitchen, which is a part of a large residence, and also the window configuration and how we would move walls versus taking that whole space into the smaller dwelling or trying to divide it to grab that extra 40 square feet.
It's just added expense.
It's added expense, yes, it is added expense and loss of a primary function of the main house.
Yeah, cause I'm looking at the size of the kitchen here, cause both are occupied by, potentially, what do you have, a one bedroom here, so is there sort of a notion of, is it gonna be considered a family apartment?
So the intent is for it to be a long-term separate dwelling unit.
One family,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, and what the owners may currently use it, they're anticipating the need for a potential live-in caregiver, but want to also plan for the future of the house as a whole and having the ability to have a separate long-term.
Yeah, cause I'm looking at the size of the kitchen here and they're both potentially occupied by one family, for the size of the kitchen here and the size of the kitchen here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's clearly, the owners would like to maintain the majority of the house for their own use, but to have the option of having the second dwelling unit on the property. And we looked at creating, in addition to minimizing the construction, we looked at creating this dwelling unit at the other end of the house and different options on the property, but in weighing those options, we also looked at the lay of the land and the site and how the site functions and how two families would move and dwell on the property together, and the location of entrances and things allowed those two locations to provide more private residences on the site for each unit.
How many units could you put on this piece of property in this zone, if you wanted to? 3, right?
3, I believe, in the multifamily.
What's going on, what's gonna happen, with this no access attic, I guess, or eaves, or?
Yeah, I mean, that's really like crawl space, you can't stand in that,
Okay.
yeah, that's,
That's still gonna be, that second floor is going to be part of the original, of the
the
main
main
house.
house, correct, so there are no changes proposed on the second floor, that will all remain part of,
So it seems like the red is the only two changes to be made on that floor plan.
that's correct.
Taking out a door and adding a door.
Right.
And then
And we
a
will be,
bedroom becomes a living room and
correct,
an entry.
correct. Yeah. And we will, as part of the construction, will be creating a fire separation between the two dwellings. So that's kind of along the dashed line that shows the separation of the two dwellings. And then also a fire separation at the ceiling, because the story above this dwelling is remaining part of the main residence, so we're required to have a fire separation there as well.
1 hour, what is the?
1
reading?
hour,
1 hour? And so does that means, right across the ceiling,
correct,
the entire ceiling,
correct.
1 hour means that a fire could burn for an hour before it got through.
before it even self-ignite, it got so hot on the other side that it could self-ignite on the other side, it doesn't necessarily have to burn through.
Okay.
And you can usually achieve a 1 hour with 2 layers of 5/8 inch sheetrock.
Right, yeah, I mean, we have to open things up and see what the framing is and determine what that ceiling assembly
And if you
will
have any
be.
common ductwork, you've gotta put leaks in and stuff like that.
Right.
So the closet just, below the pantry, I guess, or south of the pantry is part of the apartment?
That is part of the main dwelling, so, I've highlighted it in green, but the dashed line that kind of shows the separation of the dwellings, shows
Okay.
this closet, and really, again, kind of taking that square footage for the apartment. I mean, it would create a closet, but we'd like to try and maintain a connection between the two, so what you're gaining for the second dwelling, and I'm not sure that we're actually getting 40 square feet, we might, I don't think so, out of that. But again, we didn't feel that it was benefiting this apartment, in terms of trying to achieve that minimum square footage.
So the pantry, in terms of, I mean, it almost looks like you could gain the 60 and still maintain the storage capabilities of the pantry.
By moving the interior walls.
Right. I'm just,
Yeah,
just
we
by looking at it.
we probably could with more construction. You know, our hope is to be able to create the fire separation with the double layers of sheetrock, and this area will have to create a
Mhm.
new wall inside of that,
Mhm.
and then we can have a fire rated door here.
Is that what this double wall thing is going on the outside? What is that?
No, that's a brick veneer on the
Oh, it's a brick
outside.
veneer, okay.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at, the closet designated area, I mean, you have closets, off of, I mean, in the new created single-family area, you've got it going into the living room, closet space, and closet space on the other side, and that's the limit of the closet storage space.
Correct.
For the entire family.
Correct, yeah, I mean,
I
it's a
mean,
one
for all the
bedroom.
clothes and everything.
Yeah, I know. Yes, it's a small one bedroom apartment. People need additional storage who are going to live there, it will be,
Well, this is
The
what,
base.
the comprehensive plan is looking for. I know that the comprehensive plan is encouraging apartments, and, this is, in that direction, which is a point in its favor. And it would be a, reason that the ZBA could hang its hat on not trying to force the extra 60 square feet. That we're trying to make it so that the goals of the comprehensive plan are achieved with least outlay of money from the people that are making them, creating them. And still come up with something that's habitable space that,
So why is the comprehensive plan looking for additional apartments?
I think the comprehensive plan identified that, the village lacked, enough, lacked, a good stock of rental units.
In R3 zones?
Yeah, I think it's just in the village in general.
Just for reference, the small closet and hall area outside of the pantry represents about 20 square feet, so even if we were to incorporate that into the dwelling unit,
You're saying that X part?
correct, and the closet behind it, the
Closet
small
behind it.
closet,
All right, so you're saying that's 20 square feet?
approximately.
Approximately
I'm
20
just
square
scaling
feet.
off the drawing, so if we were to incorporate that in, we would lessen the variance that we'd be requesting, but we
Right.
would still request that. And then, I mean, it could become hall space and a closet for the dwelling unit, but we still do wanna maintain access between the two if possible.
Yeah, it's kind of an awkward space, I guess it would be a closet.
Well, the area space, it's not like you're walking down a long hall or anything like that.
Yeah. Does anybody have any other questions?
No?
Grace, any design ideas, looking at the,
I mean, I think it's a really smart use of the existing walls that's being done. I see why you would request this variance to sort of minimize the amount of sort of surgery you need to do within this space.
mhm.
And I think it seems fairly minimal to the amount she's looking for, the variance they're looking for.
Anybody else, we can
I don't have any other questions.
close the public hearing, I guess, and discuss, and then,
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
Yeah, there's nobody here to speak.
yeah.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, second, Donald made it, you
Second.
can
Second, I
second,
second it.
whichever.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Alright. So, I mean, it sounds like we could be, we might not be granting the minimum variance needed, if we keep the closet and that hallway space as part of the main building. Doesn't seem like it's totally necessary, but it's not that big of an advantage, and it also creates an awkward space there in the smaller apartment. Seems like to me, it's hard to imagine. I don't have a three-dimensional mind to closet.
It's one of those situations where the space needed to get to the payoff space is more than the payoff space. The payoff space being the closet, the hallway to get to it is bigger than, it's, the law of diminishing returns feels like it's making the applicant.
Is there already a door in the closet?
Yes.
That's really my only,
Well, if you ever run short of
Question.
space in your house, would you be willing to go to a storage facility? That's a long hike.
I lived in a 350 square foot apartment for quite a while, so this is like.
I mean, you've got a
Yes.
long closet right here in the, well, now the living room, and you've got another closet here off the office. Which is more than most one-bedroom apartments have, I don't,
I'm just creating conversation here about what you think a family might need as opposed to, I guess it is one bedroom.
if it's a family, it's gonna be, you know, they're gonna have an infant, and they're gonna be looking to buy, you know, a bigger apartment.
You're gonna wanna live in the other part of the house.
Are they gonna go, you know? This is what the comprehensive code is saying, you know, this is a place for people to start. This is, something you can move to Cold Spring and not have to spend, $550,000 for, you know. You can rent a little place and you can get yourself established, and then you can
yeah.
Renting the
get a
best
great
house
job
in
on
your
Wall
life.
Street and buy, Aaron's house.
No, so.
Eric, any
the,
thoughts? Do you have any thoughts, Eric?
Now, it's hard for me to have a firm opinion without knowing the logic behind the number, the 600 square foot minimum. And we don't know what the reasoning was. I suspect it was pretty much arbitrary, could have been 550. I think the best guess we have is that it's intended to preserve a certain level of quality in the housing stock, to prevent a race to smaller and smaller units resulting in tenements. I don't see that if we grant this variance, we are encouraging that kind of decline in quality. Obviously the house itself is already spacious, and it will remain spacious after this change. And so I don't know, in granting the variance, I don't see that we're working against the spirit of the 600 square foot minimum as far as we can guess what it is.
Mhm. And I think if you combine that with the fact that we're not expanding the outside of the building, then that is a reason to,
Yeah.
that contributes to the argument that we're not making things smaller. I mean, if we were expanding the building and making a 400 square foot apartment, that would be a different matter. So I think it's, from my perspective, it's reasonable for us to trust the architect who designed this, who I assume is Karen, and say that there are valid reasons for preserving that closet off the pantry, and that eliminating that or requiring or denying the application completely would require an expensive configuration of the kitchen area. I mean, we're not creating a miserable living space by making it 40 feet smaller, for sure. Do they have a view from that apartment?
They do have a view.
So, why don't we,
Those are the criteria.
why don't we go through our criteria? I don't know, do we wanna take a straw poll on whether we should eliminate the closet or keep the closet, or? Does anybody have an opinion that says that we should only grant a 20-foot variance instead of a 40-foot variance?
I don't think we should, that's my, personally, I don't believe that we should, I think that it's okay the way it's proposed.
Okay, so it's actually 560 feet that's proposed, mine all right, let's do this quickly and then we'll be ready for the final part of the evening. So let's go through our criteria. The benefits sought by the applicant can or cannot be achieved by any other physical means. I don't know if we need to do a roll call on this, but I'm gonna say cannot without reconfiguring the kitchen area of the house. House, and with little benefit to the new apartment. Anybody want to add to that?
It sounds practical to me.
Proposed application will not produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood.
Will not.
There's no impact to the exterior.
Exterior, no off-street parking, no on-street parking is needed.
And any family,
There's more than enough spaces. It's just,
and any family that would be there would be quite small.
Only one bedroom. Eric?
Nothing else.
Okay. Required variances requested is not substantial.
I would say it's not.
I agree, and I think that's key.
Don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah, I think it's not substantial in the fact that we're not really reducing the livability.
The habitability of
dwelling.
the proposed single-family residence. And I would add to that the other amenities seem to be all provided for and adequately mapped out. I mean, in the sense that if we go to distinguish this from another situation by saying it's not substantial, the extra 40 feet. And it is kept as a, one-bedroom apartment. Not that there's a restriction there, but it's designed for one bedroom.
Proposed variance will not have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district.
Well, you're not changing this big structure.
It's not even visible from most places in the
I
village.
mean, what about driving up and down? Does it cause any?
you don't see it from this Rock Street, I don't think. I don't remember
Can
seeing
you
it.
see from
Do-
You
anywhere?
can't really see it from
No,
the
you
street.
can kind of see like the
Little
roof of
bit.
the dwelling from Rock Street.
What kind of driveway surface is it? I mean, such that you might have,
It's paved up the hill because it's shared with 7 Rock Street, and then once it enters this property, it's a gravel short dirt drive with some pavers in front of the front door, but it's primarily dirt.
I think it's good for us to note that this isn't going to really increase traffic that much in case we have another case where somebody wants to split a house into 600 square feet right on the street level or something like that. Eric, did you have a thought?
No, but that wouldn't really be relevant, is it? Because we're just considering the question of 40 feet minus, plus or minus. The
Yeah,
question of
true.
dividing this into an apartment is already settled.
That's true.
It's not in our hands. So our decision has no
point.
bearing on it.
Good point. I'm gonna remove that. Pledge of difficulty was or was not self-created.
It was self-created.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they could make more room and spend more money. I don't know, it doesn't necessarily have to go after the closet, could have gone after half the pantry, but the owner sees a need for all that extra space, the primary one.
Okay. Anything else on that? All right, so I think, in balance, I can piece this together from what we said. We can't do it without reconfiguring the kitchen area at larger expense than is needed to create the apartment. It's not gonna produce an undesirable change because there's no impact to the exterior and no on-street parking needed, and in fact, that is not really part of this consideration, as was mentioned with the other, point.
And it's limited to a one-bedroom
Right.
residence.
It's this one-bedroom apartment, it's small. It's not a substantial, variance because we're not creating, an apartment that is any less livable or habitable than a 600 square feet apartment. And there's no adverse impact, environmentally, physically.
And Grace lived in a 320 square foot.
And Grace can attest that this is true.
So it's palatial in comparison.
She's still here to testify.
People do it. People do it all the time.
Okay, so this is gonna be resolution 05, I think, 2019. Can I have a motion to grant the variance?
I move to grant the variance as discussed under the criteria.
I'll second variance.
Okay, great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody
Thank you.
against? No. Thank you, we'll get this out to you soon. Thanks for your patience.
No, that was very interesting. I'm glad I got to hear that. Thank you very much.
If you see Bill Sussman out there, send him on in, please.
Okay.
My apologies, I came back to you on the prior order. Yeah, I was just frazzled between that and
I don't think, that's not yours, is it? No.
what's that?
I think Matt Francisco might have left that here.
What is it?
I think he was just
recorder.
recording the previous meeting.
He's a likely suspect,
Is there a place to leave it
but I may be
here?
reading too many detective novels.
Is that a recording device?
If it's,
Oh,
if
that
it's
is.
his,
Oh, I do.
we can put it in the planning board mailbox, but we're not,
I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure it was his, but I don't know, but
Does anyone
I can
have
email
his
him.
text number or?
I can leave it on Jeff's desk with a note.
Okay, that's a great idea.
good night, thank you.
Good night.
Karen.
Oh, I was coming back to give public comment about your app. No,
Is
Oh,
this your,
is this your?
recording
Yeah.
device?
Oh.
There we
Okay.
go.
Motion to merge.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Alright, so,
Anything else? Any other business?
yeah, we have one last thing, it's a workshop for a 6-foot fence,
Okay.
and I think we can run through this quickly.
Oh, by the way, I will not be here on May
I didn't
2nd.
say anything.
Something about, what are you gonna say?
I don't say anything, I just sit here quietly.
Alright,
May 2nd, I can't make it to the
oh,
workshop.
and, Luke left his, you can't make it, okay.
I can't, just to let you know, and say it open to the board, because
Alright.
I'll be at the Kentucky Derby.
Sure.
Oh, okay, trust me, I will, 26 years in a row.
So that other gentleman left.
Wow.
He's not here.
Okay,
Just-
Let's-
You had told him
I did tell him
10:45.
10:45, so let's give
Oh,
him,
maybe he'll be back then.
Oh,
let's give him 7 minutes, he just lives around the corner.
better bring a six-pack.
So,
Just teasing.
how does we could talk about scheduling a meeting with the village attorney, and if we wanna do that. It would not be, we could do it as a public meeting next time, we can do it as a private meeting. We don't have to have it as a private, closed meeting, could be open to the public, where we talk about, issues of precedent, and we can, if anybody wants to talk about the merger thing anymore, we can do that, but I don't think we really need to.
I would like to get a sense of how substantial, if we grant those variances and permit the application, how substantial we're essentially setting aside and ignoring the clause that Luke read to us, and disregarding it. So how substantial of an action is that? Is it commonly done, or is it quite a shocking?
What was the clause? What are you talking about?
The one he read about,
Mm.
the so-called merger clause. If we grant the variances, we are disregarding and rejecting that clause.
No, we're not.
I would say by implication, we're completely ignoring it. And
Well, then we should have a meeting, I guess.
Hi, come on in.
You guys must be exhausted.
It's a long one for
It's
us,
a
we
battle.
usually don't go this long. Let me
I'll try to be brief, guys
grab your, did I miss?
and ladies.
Oh, this is your file, there we go, reference.
For diversity.
I know.
So, what we've got here is, I don't know if anybody's had a chance to look at this. Bill lives at 3 Furnace, which has been wonderfully renovated. It's right next to James Hartford's house, which is next to 7 and 9, where we recently denied a 6-foot fence. And Bill is asking for a 6-foot fence around his property and a pergola. One thing that, so we're not gonna talk about the merits of your application, we're just gonna make sure you're ready for a public hearing.
Okay.
And I think we're gonna discuss the history of 6-foot fences in the village a little bit, so you know that, what you're in for, I guess.
Well, I heard a lot about variances earlier, so
Yeah,
I understand the importance of that,
so,
but please.
you were going to, these are all,
I have some copies of stuff, pictures. And so forth.
sure, why don't you distribute those, just so we can see what.
I think you asked for, to bring the Board of Appeals and the deed, I don't know. if
Yeah.
that's, and, so. Just sort of included a package, and I included the, not the DEC, but the, you had wanted copies of.
Oh, the
his-
short environmental.
Yeah, so each has that attached. So this is the survey, and then there's photos around the house, and and then there's a diagram of where everything would go. So you get an idea. And I have an enlargement, and I can show you the larger scale if you're interested.
So this is looking at the back of your house?
No, that's the side, that's one side. So if you want, I can point it out to you. That's a multifamily house over there.
Oh, this is looking through
This is
the-
looking at Main Street, like if Main Street's on the
okay.
other side of
Gotcha.
that.
So you're
That-
standing in your backyard looking at this?
Yeah, so I actually try to mark it so you can see sort of, see up top and to the
I
side.
see. Thank you.
It's a little crude, but,
Parking
that's the
lot,
parking lot.
James's kayak.
So are you saying that the yellow line is the proposed fence?
Yes,
So I would suggest that you would, on your, that you label, nobody would know, we wouldn't know that. So you should write on here,
may
the
I have
yellow
it?
line indicates
Oh, the fence.
proposed fence, which
Okay.
is subject
Okay,
to
I will.
this application.
Got it. And
Alright.
then,
And then when you go, make it clear so we understand, so you're saying that Furnace Street is here?
exactly, like Main Street's on the other side of that, Furnace Street's on this side of it.
So this is standing in his backyard looking towards Main Street.
It might help to say, standing in my backyard looking, you know what I'm saying?
Okay, I'll be
Alright,
more explicit.
alright, explicit, because we don't live there, you know, we don't know it, we,
Understood.
and so somebody, the member of the public who wanted to come in and see what was
Got it.
going on.
Here, I try to mark it this way.
Okay, look at that, wow, okay, so,
How is it that's a current fence that's up there, correct, or some fence?
Yeah,
Because it's
well,
not
yeah,
direct-
there's
it's not
sort of
really
a
on the
fence
property line?
like, there's on the side with, the Hartfords, it's sort of a wire-ish fence, it's up there, so.
Yeah,
And then there's a parking lot behind me, and that's sort of a mangled wire fence, a little different.
so it seems like there's a little bit of off,
Yeah,
Offline.
well, here's what happened. I had a survey done. My survey actually goes here on
Mhm.
James's property, but for some reason when they built my house, they built it on James's property.
Mm.
So, to be fair, I'm just gonna put the fence there and just not.
Guess that few square feet.
Yeah, you know what? What's the difference?
but this is private, this is James'
That's
property here,
exactly
that's his
right.
backyard.
Yeah, so James was like here.
And the other fence that we had considered was
is
just on this
on
side.
the other side. So this
Yeah.
guy's got surrounded by residential. So here's Romeo and Juliet's over here. This is a multifamily here, and the multifamily, and this is a parking lot, public lot. So it's
That's a
very
public
close.
lot?
Yeah. So in fact,
so, in other words, this is Romeo and Juliet in this building here, and
yes,
right there?
yes.
And so, and this is access,
Yeah, so it's sort
access to it?
yeah, this is back access. So actually, some people actually come here and they go to their apartments over
And-
there.
And this is
Multifamily.
concrete patio, which I guess continue, in other words, okay, so the
Yeah.
building is over here.
Exactly.
This is parking or,
No, so these are the buildings, and this is parking over there. So here, I can actually, if you'll give me the opportunity. So,
oh, this is looking down in between right there.
yeah, so here's Furnace Street. I don't know if you, sorry. So this would be James, right here, okay? James lives over here. So this is looking at James's property. These are the buildings that I look at over here.
And those, yeah, those are the ones that are, commercial,
Correct.
and they're to your north.
And that's in the B one.
Yeah, and there's Main Street right here behind them. They're right on, the other side of these is, you know,
Main.
stores.
Yeah.
And then this is here, so that's the parking lot behind me.
Now, what is, what's that a
Where-
parking lot
Where is that
to?
in relation to your lot?
You know, it's,
Is it a
it's
residential
here.
parking lot, or-
Yeah, I don't know exactly who parks there. It's behind a bunch of shops, and, you know, there's also apartment buildings, so I don't know. I don't know if they're assigned or what have you, but there's always cars there.
According to this, it's part of that that parcel that goes all the way through to Main Street.
Is that a private parcel?
So you're in the R
Oh, it
one
goes all the way
district, and
through.
you're bordering B one. In other
Yeah,
words, there's
yes.
B one,
Oh, yeah.
that's, the line is right
Oh,
here.
so,
Yeah, and then this is also a
I
parking
get it.
lot. so-
And then,
Yeah,
where's that, where's that?
yeah, I get
oh,
it,
yeah.
it's that little angle.
He's, where are we?
He's got
He's
it.
that first
Right there,
R1 lot.
right there.
Yeah.
So in other words, this is B one, B one, B one,
Right,
R one,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
When is the parking back there? I mean, when is it utilized and?
You know,
what is it
it's, this
utilized
was,
for?
this was today, like, this afternoon. Sometimes there's a lot of cars there, sometimes not so many during the day. Weekends, there tends to be more, I don't know, people just like trying to beat parking on the street.
Are there bright lights at all? I mean, any overhead lights?
A little bit over here on this fellow's property, so, but not much I can do about that.
Okay, here's here's your,
But there are no like parking lot lights per se.
Nothing like blinding or
Or-
anything,
or-
and even what I'm proposing won't stop anything, it's so high, but it would prevent me from seeing the automobiles.
for me, for the application, I would just help if you just take like this plan and just key this into,
Here,
You know
like,
what I'm saying?
put little
So-
things so you
so
could kind of see
you
it.
could kind of say,
Okay.
okay, this is photo A,
Okay,
this is,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So you go
yeah.
through it, you kind of go, oh, I get
yeah,
it, I
yeah,
get it,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Without going crazy with it, just tying things together a
Yeah.
little bit so
I understand.
people understand what it is.
Sure.
You know,
I'll have to do that.
So just so that you're aware, I'm not discouraging you from applying for this or trying to suggest that you change your application. But the zoning board has a history of granting 6-foot fences where the R1 district borders the B1 district, which is two sides where you're proposing a fence. And we also have a history of not granting 6-foot fences between two lots within the R1 district. And we recently granted such a fence across the street from you. Peter?
Yeah, yeah.
His fence, a similar situation to yours, but at 7 and 9 Furnace, we did not grant a 6-foot fence because it's fully in the R1.
Yeah, you know what, I mean, that makes sense, I mean, that's a good compromise, I mean, I'm mainly interested, and look, I understand, I live in the town, I don't live 10 miles from town, but I'm just trying to get a little more privacy, so, for the commercial side, I don't have a problem with James. They don't have a problem with 6-foot fence, but I understand your position.
I think the application is clear, it's just pulling together his,
Do you want me to
Drawings on the
update
photos,
this, and then
so that, you
just
know,
give it back, submit
so
it
people understand.
to Jeff in town? and-
I think you can update that. I think it's, I've spent more time right around there, so it might be clear to me, but the public may not, know what they're looking at. So I would take Nolan's advice there and do that.
I think it might also be helpful to show, think of calling it a pergola, that location on the site plan as well, just to help tie it together, because you have it in your 3D, but it doesn't show up here.
Okay,
Right.
And how tall is the pergola?
I think it's like 6 foot as well, but it's just a fence to get in, so it's, you know, it's not anything completely fancy. I actually put a picture of it in there somewhere. You know, the thing I'll say is, when you're looking at the property from Prentice Street, if you happen to walk by, the fence, you won't even be able to see it really, because I'm gonna have, first of all, it's like a straight line, I'm gonna have foliage in front of it, so you won't see it. You will see the gate though, you would see the pergola, which I think is keeping in the style of the house, but, I need a gate either way, I got my dog in there, so, but this is, to me, a little nicer, if I can do it.
It looks like it's taller than 6 feet, but, I mean, we can get into that later at the hearing, but you're saying the top
I
of the
think I
pergola?
I tried to put the dimensions in somehow.
It's 42 inches to top of pergola from 4 feet, so.
Oh, it's a little taller.
So, be sure to bring in the exact height and size of the pergola, please.
And, I mean, the consideration is, you know, even though people have bordered streets on the R1 zone, we haven't necessarily granted anything over 6 feet. With the exception of that historic fence. What?
Actually, this would have to be over 6 feet because it's going over somebody's head.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? I mean, the one that recently came before us at the Iron Gate,
Right.
which was more of a see-through thing, but the,
We made sure that it was not over 6 feet.
I'm just talking out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, then I couldn't have a pergola or any arch, because my nephews are all over 6 feet, so they couldn't.
Where'd you get your jacket?
Thank you. You know what?
It's in this jacket.
I probably go to Macy's. I'm not very creative when it comes to
Macy's,
shopping.
something like that? Okay,
Tommy Hilfiger.
So why don't we, is everybody okay with, having a public hearing for this at our next meeting?
Was that
John
May
will be
2nd? I
there.
won't be there.
And then let's look at the people who need to be notified. And then let's go on. Yeah, May 2nd.
Great. So I'll update these things, and then, I don't need to bring another packet of stuff, do I? for the
No,
meeting?
just update it. You don't
Okay.
have to make new copies.
Okay.
I do wanna review the people who need to be notified though. And I will send you instructions on how to do all that, probably tomorrow or over the weekend. But actually, let's make sure we have time to get that in. So you've got it's exactly 2 weeks, so you'll have to make sure everything gets handled by Monday at the latest. That includes getting the sign there's a public hearing sign, and you'll have to notify the neighbors, but I will send you instructions on that.
Okay, great.
So let's look at the people who need to be notified. Are we gonna have, at least 3 people here?
Nobody
Anybody else
here.
gonna be missing? Okay.
Donald, can you make it?
What?
Oh,
May 2nd?
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So you're gonna wanna notify, James and Juhi, the buildings that are, on Main Street that you see. Let me pull up a map.
So Romeo and Juliet?
Yeah, and the other apartment building there, the one who owns that lot. behind the
Carl.
house.
See, I don't know if Romeo and Juliet, I don't even think, my fence will start there. I think it starts at Carl's property. Does that matter, or?
But they're gonna see it, so they're.
Oh, yeah,
gonna
they'll
be
definitely see it.
notified.
Yeah, okay.
And then also, I would notify Peter across the street and probably his next door neighbor,
Okay.
because they will probably see the,
You mean Richard, Richard?
oh,
Bruce?
Richard, right, sorry, Richard Bruce, sorry, thank you. And, do we need to? Do you think anybody else? Do you have that, my laminated map? Is that somewhere? So there's 3 buildings on Main Street, from the corner toward the river.
3 on Main Street?
Yeah. So you've got Romeo and Juliet, the one next to it, and then the one next to that.
The one across the street, you mean?
And you
Or
can-
this one you're saying,
Yeah,
that one?
all 3.
Okay. I don't even know who owns that.
Jeff can help you figure that out.
Okay.
And then, I think you have to do the flower shop, and then maybe you don't need to do,
I don't know if Richard Bruce can see it.
yeah, maybe that's enough.
What about the house on the other side of James and Juhi?
Yeah, you should notify them.
Because that's kind of set back. Does it have a view through behind James's house into your property?
It does now.
It does,
Okay, so they would see the fence then, right?
Yeah, they would.
Okay, so
They
they
would.
should be
Yeah.
so you should notify them. That's 7 Furnace. I think it's one owner for that duplex.
I think Mr. Downey owns a couple of those buildings, Flower Shop and Romeo and Juliet.
So, you know, just for an understanding of what information might be needed, you know, and I know I'm not gonna be there, but, I mean, some of the understandings with the fence heights and everything deal with nuisance and whatnot, as far as, commercial enterprise and, or, you know, from parking lots or schools.
Mhm.
Does everybody fully understand what the nature of the, parking lot is back there?
I've seen it. I don't know how busy it is, or,
Cause that,
Well, if you want, I can get some photos when it's hopping.
it was a lot easier
so
to see.
yours, yeah, his house is the first house, so that property extends all the way past his house to the rear of James's house and the neighboring house, correct? Does that come, is that accurate?
It's the,
It barely hits the guy next to Carl.
it's the two houses. So
Okay.
this one.
Yeah.
I got you. Done, okay.
All right.
I mean, that's a little bit of a gray area back there, I mean, from what we've dealt with. Anyway. Just didn't know.
I'm in your hands.
I
We'll see, you know,
didn't know if anything else was
You
needed.
know, listen,
Yeah.
whatever happens, happens.
Hey,
I look at it,
exactly.
You know, I've made my case, and
Yeah.
if it can be great, you know.
Okay, so, I'll follow up with you on what you need to do.
Great.
and Thank you. Thanks for
Thanks
your
for doing your
patience.
job.
Good luck.
Appreciate it.
All right, so I think we're done. I don't have any minutes or anything, so.
What Eric was saying, I think that what Eric, we wanna have that meeting with the village attorney to go over this section, to understand it fully and see, and just make sure we all on the same page.
The implications of granting variances, what they would be.
And how it relates to, this code section, the existing non-conforming lot code section, and, any precedents.
Mhm.
Yep.
Right.
So the lawyer would pull precedence, or is it on someone else to do that?
He would do what to it?
Who would pull the precedence? The lawyer would, or?
Oh, you mean who would pull the cases?
Yeah.
Well, we can ask him. I mean, it's in our village, it's in the village record, so we
Mhm.
could ask Jeff to do it. And in fact, John did review the legal cases that came about. There were two lawsuits involving the Marathon property, because they wanted to unmerge some lots, and the ZBA said no, the court said yes, and then the appeal said no, so they didn't get built. So that's one, I know that Matt is worried about that. And then I think the other thing to look at is what other properties are like that one
Right.
that might suddenly wanna be building homes on them. And is there a way to, target 21 Parsonage so specifically that we're not creating an opening for everybody to do this, everybody in a similar situation to do it, should we grant the variances?
Is this meeting, as a part of the public hearing, or is this an executive session?
Well, we can do it either way. We have the ability to have a closed meeting with our attorney. And for zoning boards, what that means is that we cannot, we're not like the village board who can make some decisions in an executive hearing. We cannot hear new evidence, we can't hear from witnesses, we can't make any decisions. All we can really do is ask our attorney questions that would be helpful to our evaluating of the application. And I don't know that we need to do it in a closed hearing, but we certainly can. I want it to happen in a way that everybody on the zoning board feels comfortable that they can ask questions without having to worry about influencing the public, or, you know, I'm very new on the board, I would say, and there's a lot that I don't know about, so wouldn't necessarily want to expose all my ignorance to the public, but I'm not embarrassed by it. We can certainly talk to him publicly or privately. I don't have a preference. He might wanna do it privately, so that he feels he could speak candidly with us without, providing,
Yeah, I feel like since potentially our relationship to the applicant could be adversarial, that we should be able to talk to the attorney.
I think we should talk in confidence with the attorney. I mean, in a sense that it would just open it up for, too much of going back and forth, but I mean, that's my thought.
yeah, and, so we could schedule that before our next meeting on the 2nd, but you're not gonna be here, John, and I'm sure you wanna be for that meeting.
Yeah,
We can potentially schedule it in between, I think.
like next week.
I would just wanna confirm that with John, that we're allowed to do that, and what kind of notification, if any, is needed.
Can we do it Thursday or Wednesday? 'Cause I'll be up
Probably
in,
next week.
Yeah.
because I'll be in Albany unless we did it on Monday of not this weekend, but the weekend following. But on the 2nd, or on the Tuesday or Wednesday, I'll be leaving.
Okay,
That would be in around the 1st.
okay. All right, so I will check with John and schedule that. So I think we can adjourn.
Yeah.
Take a motion to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, great, John.
Um,
Thank you
I will
for putting all that time in.
collect this stuff